Hello, welcome back. You're listening to A Path to Wellness on rhinoonair.com, WSPF-db.com from beautiful downtown St. Petersburg, Florida. And I'm Dr. Christopher Jackson, PhD, DOM, and my practice is A Path to Wellness, which is part of where I get the name for the show. That's basically based on a philosophy that has developed for me over time, but certainly I strongly believe in trying to be for each individual on a path to wellness. And so I'm going to talk about some things that are kind of out there maybe a little bit, just thinking a little bit about some of the things that have been in the news, particularly relating to the president-elect and some tweets that he's been making regarding nuclear weapons and nuclear dominance, basically. And from a natural medicine point of view, some of the things that we can do to help ourselves in the event, say we're lucky enough that we survive something like that, for example. What do we do then? Or say somebody manages to get a nuclear weapon to the US and we shoot it out of the sky, which is something I worked on years ago. I worked on SDI. This is years and years ago when I was in my engineering career and doing research on SDI out of the University of Texas at Dallas. I was working on some physics stuff there, and the idea of SDI, which came from Ronald Reagan, and at least his administration, was to shoot out missiles or shoot at the missiles as they're coming in and deactivate them or knock them out of the sky. And how's that going to work? Is it going to cause a nuclear explosion if we shoot at them? No, most likely not, because the detonation of that is not something that's going to happen in that manner. So most likely it'd be okay, but say for some reason it exploded in the air above us, well, there still would be nuclear fallout and this kind of thing. So these kinds of concepts that I haven't had to think of or about for a long, long time and used to bother me. And I thought we were, doing better in that area and that we were reaching a consensus that it's inconceivable that we go that direction. Yet here we are in the news talking about it from the tweets of the coming administration. So how does that affect us? That's part of what I want to get into. And, what is this gamma radiation and all this stuff that happens from the nuclear explosion? So it's something that, I guess hopefully is just all theoretical and we never have to see it happen again. And the only time we've seen it happen to where it's really affected a population has been, actually there's been 2 times. And that was the dropping of the first bomb and then the dropping of the second bomb. I'm not sure which came first, Hiroshima or Nagasaki, but both were in Japan, killed lots and lots, hundreds of thousands or millions of people instantly. To conceive of that is so difficult for me. I mean, just that some human being would make the call that would happen is just inconceivable. Yet it has happened, and So maybe it's not so inconceivable that we would have somebody get into office who would be conceiving of that as a possibility. And maybe that's not the issue. Maybe that's not what's going on. Maybe it is just posturing. But posturing with things that are so dangerous, what about the event of a reactionary situation? How do we know that things are going to be okay and that we can trust the people who are involved to make the right decisions? And actually, that was discussed a lot during the campaign. And here we see it happening, at least in conversation. This is being brought up. So how does radiation affect us? And I've discussed in the last show, I believe, about the electromagnetic spectrum and ionizing versus non-ionizing radiation and how these things affect us. I've written a lot about it. I have actually a book that I've written years ago that people can access through my website. And I believe some people who have been making the circuit and talking nationally have been referencing some of what I've written about. But the types of radiation we're talking about that affect us, our bodies, and specifically the primary thing that we're concerned about is, although, if you're very directly exposed, you're pretty much done for. You'll probably be looking at cancer, and it will be a very, very bad situation, and not easily recoverable by any means in that situation. However, and this is kind of doomsday stuff. However, in terms of, slighter or lesser exposures to radiation, there are many things we can do to help our bodies defend against the effects, the mutagenic effects of ionizing radiation. And first of all, let's discuss how that affects us. So, yes, potentially it could affect any part of your body, your skin, your organs, etc. However, the primary focus typically in the event of nuclear fallout or radiation due to a nuclear event like happened in Japan a few years ago, protection comes in the form of a pill, potassium iodide. The reason that that's related is that the radiation affects the function of the thyroid. It damages the thyroid. So the thyroid does not function at the level it should be. And potassium iodide helps to fight not only the effects of the radiation and the cancer-producing effects, it provides the iodine that is needed for the thyroid to function. And, there may be depletion of that when the body's trying to fend off the radiation effects. So the kinds of things that affect, the kinds of radiation that affect us in these ways range from X radiation to gamma radiation to cosmic radiation. These are the primary ones. Now, I did also discuss last time ultraviolet radiation and its effects, and they do show up. We do see effects from ultraviolet radiation. That's what, all this talk about it staying out of the sun and skin cancer comes from. So we have the effects of ultraviolet radiation on our skin, for sure. Particularly there are bad forms of ultraviolet radiation that are damaging. There are actually some positive forms of ultraviolet radiation that are somewhat good for us. And we can generate vitamin D with the influence of the ultraviolet from the sun. And that happens through our cholesterol at the skin. There are conversions that happen through the liver and then through the kidneys. And our production of vitamin D is at several levels there. Generally, we test vitamin D looking at a specific type that may be available, and we want to know that type and what its level is to see how much is going on in the body regarding vitamin D. But vitamin D is a very important aspect of our health. I mean, it's not just a vitamin, it's also hormonally active. So we're looking at something that affects our hormones, our bones, obviously our bones and joints. It affects the level of iodine in our body, which then affects our thyroid function. It actually has been shown a lot lately in research to affect our blood pressure. So there are many aspects to it, and calcium metabolism has to do with the bones and joints there in terms of the effect of vitamin D. So these aspects are involved in terms of protecting oneself against radiation. It's simply making sure that your vitamin D level is good. That also helps with the mutagenic aspects, or in other words, cancer possibilities. Vitamin D is very important in boosting our immune response to help us fight off cancer. And iodine is a very important aspect of that effect, because iodine is assisted in terms of absorption into our cells through the action of vitamin D. And iodine itself is very much anti-cancer. So. Okay. So these kinds of radiation, let's talk about them again. So we've got X radiation. I've mentioned ultraviolet. We have X radiation. Oh, and by the way, just one other aspect of the ultraviolet. Ultraviolet does come in through your window. Unfortunately, the beneficial type of ultraviolet is filtered through windows. So in other words, it's filtered out, and what's left is the damaging type. So getting the sun via your window or through your window is actually not a good idea. It's better to get regular sun outdoors so that you're getting at least the positive, beneficial ultraviolet as part of that helps offset the negative aspects. So windows don't help the situation. If you're standing in your window, you're not going to be helping your situation as far as skin cancer goes. You could actually make it worse. So that's kind of an important side note. Now, when we get into X radiation, we're talking in the very high frequency areas where we have ionization. By ionization, what I mean is that the radiation literally will pop electrons off atoms and therefore ionize them, causing them to be deficient in certain in their electrons, and therefore creating ions. The creation of ions is one aspect of oxidation as well. And therefore we have the role of antioxidants. Another way of terming this is free radical damage. So the creation of these free radicals or reactive oxygen species then leads to a lot of damage within our bodies. And to correct that damage, we need antioxidants. So, occasionally I get into a discussion with someone who is not a big believer in vitamins and this kind of thing. And I'd like to kind of break that down a little bit because I think there's some misunderstanding. There are some vitamins and minerals that are well absorbed depending on the form. And quite often studies are done without consideration of the form. In other words, they're not looking at whether you're going to absorb it better with a liquid or a capsule or a pill or, say, a gelatin capsule versus a vegetable cellulose capsule versus isotonic solutions. There's many forms we can get these vitamins and minerals in. And obviously there are some that absorb much better than others. And I, in my practice, use very well absorbed forms of these things, starting with isotonics, very, very well absorbed. Isotonic solutions work by essentially simulating body fluid, looking like body fluid essentially to the stomach sensors. They're processed as body fluid, which means that the stomach opens up at the bottom, lets the fluid through because it's triggering a response that is appropriate for body fluid, ending up in the intestines, and then absorbed through the intestinal walls into the bloodstream. So this approach is very, very effective. I see great results in practice in terms of changes in levels of these vitamins and minerals for people who are deficient. And so this approach is very effective. About 95% of the active ingredients will be absorbed within about 5 minutes. And the remainder potentially can be absorbed by waiting long enough between meals and this kind of thing. So most of the isotonics work best on an empty stomach. And are very effective in that manner. Fat-soluble isotonics may work better after a meal because they glom onto the fat and then are processed isotonically. So I use these kinds of nutraceuticals that are going to effectively transport the nutrients into the body, both very effectively and very quickly, which can be useful at times, especially if somebody has, say, anemia. If they're very deficient in iron and they're feeling faint, giving them an isotonic solution can quickly improve that situation. So that's one aspect of that. Now, we can compare the standard ones, over the counter. Frankly, most over the counter, especially if you're getting them at, the corner drugstore, they're usually not going to be very good. They're not well absorbed. They may not even have everything that they are supposed to have in them. And, plenty of research kind of backs that part up. But the point is that we want to get a form that absorbs very, very well. And so these antioxidant nutrients like vitamins A, C, E, selenium, zinc, if we look at vitamin A, we can break that down further and say we don't want to take tremendous amounts of vitamin A because that can cause some issues. So what we do is we use beta carotene, which we can have in a much higher dose and have a very good effect because the body uses the beta carotene to convert to create the vitamin A it needs. So using these types of nutrients helps us effectively improve health conditions that may be, there may be a lack in terms of deficiencies, and we can address those. When we get past isotonics, isotonics are definitely my go-to solution in a lot of cases. But say that that's not appropriate for some reason or another. There are times when that is true. There are sublinguals. I'm talking liquid form. There are also tablet sublinguals as well. I prefer to go with the liquids just because they're also well absorbed in the body, not just under the tongue. So if there's anything left over, but in terms of options, the liquids are very well absorbed typically. And when I talk about liquids, for example, liquid vitamin D is one that I use fairly often. In fact, it can be very convenient because isotonics are done in powders, and if you have difficulty, bringing something with you when you're out and about, and you need to take it, that may be an issue as far as opening up this bottle of powder and pouring it into a cap and then mixing it into some water and this kind of thing while you're out at a restaurant or whatever. So at times it's more convenient to use a liquid dropper. And so specifically with vitamin D, that's one of the things that I do sometimes. I suggest to patients is that they do the isotonics when they're at home so they can have their morning dose and they can have their evening dose at home where it's easier to do that preparation. But then when they're out and about, they can have a little portable liquid bottle of vitamin D, and they can add their drops to their drink or however they want to do that to get their vitamin D while they're out. This is true for many of these types of things. Like you'll often see liquid B vitamins, quite often sublingually, they can be used. The problem I run into there is that there's a lot of these out on the market where they have the less effective types of B vitamins. These are the forms such as cyanocobalamin or folic acid, which is synthetic, as opposed to, say, methylcobalamin for B12, as opposed to cyanocobalamin, and methylfolate as opposed to folic acid. So issues like that affect the body's ability to absorb the vitamins. So certainly the sublingual approach helps to improve that. But if you have a lacking form of the vitamin to begin with, you're just not going to get as effective a result. So I try to use those in practice and educate patients regarding those kinds of things. So sublingual is a great route, though, in general, for administration of a lot of these vitamins and even minerals. So liquids in general are going to be absorbed better than pills and even capsules. Vegetarian capsules, cellulose that is absorbed well by the body can improve the action if you just need to swallow a pill. Say you have difficulty with liquids for some reason, then actually, when I say pill, I mean capsule. So a capsule, such as a vegetarian capsule, may be absorbed better than, say, a gelatin capsule, which has some proteins in it and has to be broken down a little differently. And then the gelatin capsules typically are going to be better absorbed than, say, pills. However, pills quite often are made with fillers and binders and this kind of thing that make them difficult to break down. Yet there are some that are made without those mechanisms, and therefore are better absorbed, more bioavailable. Bioavailability is a big issue when it comes to taking nutrients, vitamins, minerals, and even herbal medicine. The bioavailability is important in terms of the result, and that's part of my focus in terms of selecting the right medicines, the right forms of nutraceuticals, or herbal medicines, homeopathics, the whole thing. So important stuff when it comes to getting your nutrition as you need it. And when we go back to thyroid action, the use of iodine is important. We can overdo it. It is very important not to just go buy a bunch of iodine and start taking a bunch of iodine. If you take too much, it can cause a lot of trouble. So it's important also to use certain testing methods to define what the needs are in an individual, and then also use of iodine in a form that is well absorbed. Now, potassium iodide is a commonly used form, not as well absorbed as some others, and typically in a pill or capsule form. So not as well absorbed. However, when we get to liquid forms, there are several types, but the liquid is going to be better as a choice typically than a pill or a capsule. And getting a few drops of iodine a day, perhaps depending on the dosage that's in those drops, may be something that's helpful. Now, of course, we're not trying to treat, cure, prevent disease on this show. We are addressing some possibilities and discussing generally the issues that are involved with these kinds of things. So, other things need to be looked at when it comes to radiation and its effects, and we can look at the skin itself and how we can address skin issues. Well, your skin reflects internal issues as well, and addressing issues of things like skin cancer can be done naturally, and actually in a lot of cases fairly easily and quickly. There are solutions that can be used to help these situations, and sort of the big thing in cancer treatment nowadays in conventional medicine is the use of immunotherapy. And actually, natural medicine has been using immunotherapy since day one, basically. Natural medicine, the approach is to focus on the immune system and boost the immune system to help your body fight whatever it may be, cancer, just common cold, the flu, all of these things. By boosting your own immune system, these situations can be addressed. And there are many approaches, and there are many substances that do better jobs than others. So there are some very well-performing substances that can be used that tremendously boost the immune system, boost T cell levels, B cell levels, natural killer cells, these kinds of things that attack cancer. And many of these can also just generally help you with things like a cold or the flu or these kinds of things. So by boosting the immune system, we can help the body do its job, which is to attack and kill those types of cells or invaders. So it's part of our defense system, our immune system, that these work within. So in addressing these kinds of things, we need to look at more of this range. So we have gamma radiation. Gamma radiation is something that occurs from nuclear reactions. And it's just one up the scale in terms of the electromagnetic spectrum. We have X-ray. The entire spectrum is radio wave, microwave, infrared, visible, ultraviolet, X radiation, gamma radiation, and cosmic radiation. Now, from the visible spectrum on up, we have X radiation, gamma radiation, cosmic radiation. After the ultraviolet, I kind of skipped that one. So ultraviolet, X radiation, gamma radiation, and cosmic radiation. Now, we've talked some about X radiation. Of course, conventional medical approaches quite often use X radiation. X-rays are done for bone and joint issues. X-rays are done for lung function issues, looking for pneumonia, things like that. There are many ways that X-rays are used. They're used in CT, they're used in PET scans, they're used for DEXA scans, looking at bone density. They're used for dental exams, full mouth X-rays and these kinds of things to look for problems. In a lot of cases, though, that's not necessary. There are alternatives to those approaches. Not always, but in a lot of cases there are. So you can always ask, is there an other option we could use for the imaging that doesn't shoot ionizing radiation into my body? Because ionizing radiation is mutagenic. It is cancer causing. It causes mutations. It causes oxidation. It causes many issues within the body. It is somewhat invasive. But gamma radiation has some similar effects, but at a higher frequency, and therefore damaging even more so if at equal intensity. And this comes from, as I said, nuclear reactions. The damage from gamma radiation can occur. And we see cancers tremendously so in the events of nuclear fallout and these kinds of things. And then we have cosmic radiation. Cosmic radiation generally is generated from space, hence the word cosmic. It's at a higher frequency than gamma radiation, which is well into the ionizing range, very much at the peak of the ionizing range, and very damaging. So where this comes into play is actually when we're flying. When we're traveling on planes, we are being exposed to all of these ranges of radiation. And X radiation, cosmic, gamma, all of these are ionizing. All of them tend to lead to problems such as cancer, mutations, tumors, these kinds of things. So we can help our bodies, we can help ourselves defend against the effects of those ionizing radiation forms by using some herbs. And I'll give you some of the types of things you can do. You can take ginseng. Panax ginseng has been shown in studies to be protective against many forms of radiation. It is an adaptogenic herb that helps your body adjust to the damaging effects of radiation. and helps you repair. You can drink green tea. The catechins in green tea are also helpful in addressing potential for cancer and mutagenic effects and can help to defend you against those kinds of things. Simply taking a group of antioxidants can be helpful. ACE, selenium, again, very helpful. Selenium actually helps in another way as well, because it helps with the creation of the enzymes that help your body convert various forms of thyroid hormone. So selenoenzymes made from selenium actually help your body to improve its conversion from the inactive forms of thyroid hormone to the active forms, and therefore help with the response of the thyroid and help with your body's attacks on mutagenic processes because of the improved levels of iodine as well. So, and the activity of the thyroid hormone, which helps you metabolize in a better way. And the better your metabolism, the better your body's defenses and immunity, the better your absorption of antioxidants, this kind of thing. So it all works together. That can help you defend against those kinds of issues. So again, the major antioxidants that everybody, well, vitamins A, C, E, selenium are very important in that. There are some antioxidants that you may not have heard of, such as astaxanthin. Astaxanthin has been found to be at very high levels when compared with vitamin C in terms of its antioxidant activity. It really can help to repair your body and reverse some of the damage. Astaxanthin, there's zeaxanthin as well. There are many forms of antioxidants such as OPC, oligomeric proanthocyanidins, which essentially come from things like berries, blueberries, elderberry, these kinds of things. They come from pycnogenol. Pycnogenol is a bark extract, which has been shown to have very potent antioxidation activity and can be very helpful to repairing the body, therefore. Grapeseed extract is another one. Grapeseed extract is very potent as an oligomeric proanthocyanidin. And resveratrol is very important, which is essentially an extract from red wine, which is something that was discovered to be helping the French society, which tends to eat a bunch of fatty foods and yet was outliving Americans when Americans were eating better in some ways. However, I don't think that's quite the case for a lot of people who are, surviving on fast food and this kind of thing. But anyway, the effects of the resveratrol were very good for repairing the body, helping to oppose the oxidation activity in the body, which is damaging, the damage of free radicals that occurs, which I was discussing earlier. So all of these approaches can be taken to protect ourselves to a certain extent from radiation. Now, if we are exposed to very, very high doses of radiation, the odds are very, very slim that we're going to do okay, despite all of this. It's just very difficult because at certain points there is a threshold where your body's just not going to be able to defend against these kinds of things. So this is, to me, one of the reasons that it's so scary to me that people actually conceive of the idea of beefing up our nuclear arsenal, of building that, and that being the game of poker that they want to play and challenge other societies, other countries to meet. This is like a child playing with matches. A very dangerous scenario, and something that we don't have a lot of capability to really address from the point of view of medical repair. We have the tools I've been discussing. We can use all of those, and at certain levels, they will succeed. Boosting the immune system can be done to a certain point and address these issues. But at a certain point, nothing's going to work, and people die. And quite often unnecessarily. So, I wanted to discuss that, the concept, what's being talked about, and just put a few words in about the reality of that situation and what it could lead to, and what we can do, and there are limitations though. So, thanks for listening. We've been listening to A Path to Wellness on rhinoonair.com, WSPF-DV.com. And I'm Dr. Christopher Jackson, PhD, DOM, Florida. And my practice is A Path to Wellness. And if you'd like to reach us, we are at www.aptw.net on the web, short for A Path to Wellness. Or if you'd like to call us up, make an appointment, something like that, 727-329-9637. We are in Northeast St. Petersburg, Florida. And let me just make one other statement. This was not a political announcement. I'm just discussing the ramifications of this kind of talk. Leave it at that.